Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States Most Wanted cyber criminal, now good guy, and host of The Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode is episode number 82, Robert Ledogar, former United States Marshal. When we come back. All right, so we are back to today's episode of The Brett Johnson Show. We've got Robert Ledogar coming on the show. He's a former U.S. Marshal. Here's the thing. Unless you've been in trouble, you may not know this, especially unless you've been in federal trouble, you may not know this, but the U.S. Marshals are an outstanding agency. They're the U.S. Marshal Service. They handle the transfer of a lot of federal prisoners. They handle the registration of a lot of federal prisoners. If you get a federal number like mine is 264777018, if you get that number, you get it from the U.S. Marshal Service. They process you and give you your inmate number. And the reason I bring that up is throughout my entire, not only incarceration period, but all the run-ins I had with federal authorities, the U.S. Marshal Service was always outstanding about treating felons, inmates, convicts, whatever you want to call us. They were outstanding about treating us as human beings with respect, kindness, and decency. Now, that doesn't mean they were not strict. Yes, they are hard asses, but they treated us with respect and kindness and treated us as we were human beings. And you don't always get that when you've got your ass in trouble. So I make a point these days, if I ever meet a U.S. Marshal, of thanking them for treating me like that. Because it's not just one or two agents. It was the entire Marshal Service that was like that. Today, I'm talking to Robert Ledogar. He's a former U.S. Marshal, and you're going to hear his story. He's got one hell of a story to tell. And I think it needs to get out there. I think he was absolutely screwed over. I think you will agree with that as you hear his story. One of the things that strikes me is, as everyone knows who watches my show, I end my show the same single way every single time I do it. I end that by saying, at the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. Robert Ledogar embodied that. Because you have to understand that doing the right damn thing, sometimes it comes with consequences. And sometimes those consequences are very damaging, okay? Sometimes you can do the right thing and you will suffer for that. Today, I believe in doing the right thing regardless of the consequence. And I've absolutely lost some speaking engagements. So I lost a friend by doing that, and she was one who helped bring me into the speaking industry as a whole. But my insistence on always doing the right thing, regardless of always calling out not only the criminals that are out there, but the supposed good guys that are screwing up. Sometimes that sits wrong with those you are calling out, and sometimes it pisses people off. Robert Ledogar did the right damn thing, and because he did the right damn thing, he suffered the consequences, and you're going to hear his story. And I'm not going to say anything more, because that being said, I think we just need to go directly into the interview with Robert Ledogar. So without further ado, Robert Ledogar. Hey, sorry I'm running a couple of minutes late. I've got this 25-pound chihuahua that just told me she wanted to be let out. So
that's the best. It always happens when I have a little, I don't have a little, I have a 20-pound Bichon Papillon that's supposed to be 11 pounds.
Yes, I know that story.
It's Italian. It's an Italian dog now. And always wants to walk when you don't want to walk.
Of course. So how's life treating you?
Not bad. Doing good.
Good. So, hey, I appreciate you reaching out to me. You were on Matt Cox, right, or no?
Yeah. We're in. Matt and I are both in Florida. I'm about an hour south of him in Sarasota. Okay. But yeah, we connected. Awesome guy. And it's so funny, a cop talking to, a felon. So
I know, right?
But hey, it's the reality of it, man. Look what happens. Things go full circle.
They do, and Matt's been very good about turning his life around. He's doing really well with his YouTube channel. He's doing a hell of a lot better with his YouTube channel than I am with mine.
You're getting out there, though. I connect with so many people on LinkedIn, which is unbelievable. It helped me so much, and you just start following different people and jumping on and hoping that they grab onto your story too, and talk
absolutely. About it. So what we'll do, if you don't mind, I'll record the intro to this show after we get through talking and everything. We'll just begin the show. I'll ask you to introduce yourself. We'll talk about some of your background, because I got to be honest. Well, I'll save that for the show, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're ready.
Yeah, man, I'm good.
All right. So on today's show, we've got Robert Ledogar, former United States Marshal. Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Brett, thank you. Thanks for connecting and giving me this opportunity, man. It's great.
No, I truly appreciate it. So if you don't mind, Robert, if you could let the audience know who you are, and we'll just dive into things.
Sure. So my name is Robert Ledogar. I'm a ex-US Marshal, US Navy veteran. You can tell from my accent, I'm not from the South. I'm from New York, from Queens, one of the 5 boroughs.
I would have never thought that.
Not at all, right? We have the similar tone here. I'm 52 years old, and grew up in a small little town in Queens, New York, which was actually on the water, an island in a place called the Rockaways.
Okay,
was awesome, very close to JFK. Went in the Navy right out of high school. Did about 7 years. I was military police and investigator. Served in Desert Storm.
Nice.
Got out and went right into the US Marshal Service. And in the Marshal Service, I was assigned in Eastern District of New York, which is Brooklyn, is the main office. And it covers Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and then out in Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County. I was with the US Marshals for almost 25 years. Wow. I was a deputy marshal for a good 10 plus years, doing, the job, working in court, cell block, prisoner transportation, and some special assignments, protection details, extraditions, and then, of course, going to what everybody wants to do in the marshal is work warrants, the fugitive cases.
Okay.
And in New York, it's happening. It's busy all the time. So I had my opportunities there, and I excelled in the warrant squad. And then I was able to, there was some openings to become a supervisor. So I became a supervisor. And one of my chiefs said I needed to learn, the administrative part of the job, and had me working wearing a suit and tie and supervising the guys and girls that went to court all the time and transport, and dealing with the judges and the people in the courthouse. Well, that lasted for about a month. And then another chief was like, we need to put him back in the warrant squad because he doesn't blend well with...
You weren't playing well with others.
It's tough, different parts of the job, and certain people can do certain things better than others in that. So I did great in warrants, and then I became the supervisor of the warrant squad for a good 10 plus years. And in New York, it's awesome because it's part of the Regional Fugitive Task Force. It's one of the biggest task forces in the nation. So you go after the worst of the worst.
Right.
And so, like I said, I handled, the in the city area, which was Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, but we also had Long Island, which was Nassau and Suffolk County, and we had a courthouse out there in Central Islip. Also out there is we had a little division for the task force to work warrants out there in both counties. And I had assigned a young lady to work out there, and she was doing good. She was an Army veteran, and things were changing out there, and they made her a team leader, and she's a US Marshal.
Okay.
So she was overseeing a group of men out in Suffolk County. Well, after a little bit of time, some of these guys didn't really take to working for her. and started busting chops and picking on her, nitpick things, petty ass shit. And then it started getting deeper and deeper. And it got into sexual talks. And to add more to it, the young lady is a lesbian. So these guys would leave pornographic material on her desk, play videos, play songs, and start going more and leaving, asking her ideas or her experience with doing certain things with women, what they should do to their wife. It actually got so bad that one of the men tried to hook up with this girl's girlfriend at a bar after work. So then it just kept going more and more and more. And one guy who was a local cop actually made her kiss him every morning as a friendship sign, which was weird. Not in this type of work. And she let it go, and she let the breaking chops go, but she would write it down. She kept a nice little log. And that one man who made her kiss him, one day in the office, just started calling her like a sexy bitch and grabbing her and touching her in front of the other guys. She got upset, left, told me, and me being her supervisor confronted the supervisor of those guys. Right. And then we confronted that guy. He denied it, said it was, taken out of content. And he said he had witnesses. Well, the witnesses were the same guys that were busting her chops.
Right.
So they denied it. And one of those guys, a few days later, confronts her while they're doing a morning arrest of a fugitive, a hit, and hits her, shoves her, pushes her in the perp's house in front of a bystander. And the bystander is shocked. The young lady almost falls down. And this guy gives her a look like, we can get to you. Shut your mouth. Stop this shit. She immediately tells me, again, I confront the supervisor. It turns bad. I confront that guy and a couple other guys, and it gets real bad, arguing and exploding into threats of let's fight.
Right.
After that, I take her off the task force for her own safety. I'm like, I can't protect you. I'm not here all the time. So those guys collude and make up their own story that it's her. She's a woman. She's overreacting. She can't handle this job. I immediately let my chief know. He then talks to the chief of the task force. It can't stay within our level and has to get reported up the chain because the young lady documents it and goes, look, I want an investigation. I'm being harassed.
Right.
So we send it to internal affairs, and it goes there. Well, like I said, we were part of this big task force. It's a regional fugitive task force. It's funded by Congress after September 11th. Huge, big money gets shut in there from Congress. Well, the people in headquarters who oversee the task force got involved and shut down the internal affairs investigation and investigated themselves. They selected a special investigator to come in. And this was months later because, the government, they drag their feet. They don't know how to coordinate. So while it's taking time to start an investigation, my chief makes the recommendation with the task force chief is to separate people, to get them out of it, because we're all in the same workspace, like you're in the same courthouse. So the task force chief agrees, like, let's take 2 or 3 of these guys and move them out of here. But they all can still work together when they're on the street. So it's just making a tighter group of guys.
Right.
And it was all guys, it just happens. So while this is still happening, I have to deal with these guys because it's part of the warrants and the task force, and I still have people back there. Except the young lady, we put her in a different spot in the courthouse to protect her, which she was getting punished for doing her job.
Right.
So now the investigation starts off. They change it from any type of sexual harassment, assault, or bullying to call it office culture. Like we're in kindergarten. So, of course, that goes on for a couple of months. During that, the one main guy who actually assaulted the young lady, he gets the courage to know that I'm going to the New York Mets baseball game. And he shows up there with a couple of other guys. But this is during law enforcement appreciation night with the Mets. Okay. And there's about 30 or 40 guys from the New York City task force there. So everybody knows everybody. This guy now confronts me at the baseball stadium in front of all these people. We're nose to nose. We're going to fight. And I'm a supervisor. I got everything to lose. But I'm not backing down. Look, I'm from New York, man. I'm from Queens. We're fighting now. Right. I become stupid. And we're nose to nose, cursing each other out. And then a couple of guys that I know, they stand up. And these guys are like Hulk Hogan that I work with. They're monsters. So now they're all looking at each other, but I can't take my eyes off him because he's going to pop me in the mouth.
Right.
But it just ends. It just ends like that. I'm like, I got to get out of here because now we're all drinking. We're going to get into a fight. We're idiots from New York. And I go up immediately. I call my wife. She's like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, look, I'm leaving. She's out in Long Island. We live in Long Island now. And I go to my parents' house in Queens. I call my chief, who just happens to be in headquarters out with the chief from Internal Affairs. It just so they're like, listen, you got to document this and send it to us immediately. I'm like, all right, I do it the next day. I write it up. But what makes it even better, there was a chief from the task force of New York City's division who saw all this.
Okay.
So I had myself covered. He made a call too and going, look, get this guy off the task force because of what he did to me, not because of what he did to the girl.
Right.
So he gets removed. The investigations are going on. Office culture. Months later, they come back out and say, the problem is not the task force. The problem is me, Bobby Ledogar, as a supervisor, that I'm a bad supervisor, that I should have nipped this in the butt before it even got to that level. And the other problem is the young lady for not being able to deflect any of these problems before they became problems. You just can't, you can't make this shit up.
Right.
But we all see it. You see it in politics and the government. And if we're not part of the good old boy program, we work in a district. And these people were headquarters people, so they had the protection of the upper echelons.
Right.
So my chief and my marshal, who's appointed by the president, they flip out. They're like, this is bullshit. There's no way. He's like, the supervisor, me, didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't even out there. I reported the incident. I did my job. And I defended a coworker, a subordinate who worked for me, who documented everything. And, we just knew the personalities out there.
Right.
And so with that, my chief and my marshal is having conversations with leadership of the marshals and headquarters. And they just start dropping all the complaints that she made that they weren't even investigated. And one of the things that drew the attention of a headquarters leader was that one of these men urinated on her food and left it at the desk. And the food being a big animal cracker cookie jar that she would leave on her desk for others to have. But somebody peed in it. So she documented that. So this leader from headquarters was appalled by that. So he wants that investigated, but not the other things. So now Internal Affairs gets involved. They come in and the young lady dumps everything on them.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And Internal Affairs is like, we're not here to investigate any of that except somebody urinating in your food. She's like, what about these 12 other incidents? I was assaulted. And during that, the same guy who assaulted her, who tried to fight me, tried to run her off the road while they were driving to work. But they didn't want that. We had the video from the courthouse that you could see it, her racing. It's a movie. So now, over a year, this is dragging out. This is from 2014 to 15.
Right.
So now come 2016, this man who tries to fight me and assault a young lady, Internal Affairs wants to interview him because he's credible. He comes in, and before they go into, their structure, interview, they just open the door to him and they're like, hey, is there anything you would like to tell us? He said, oh yeah, Bobby Ledogar, your supervisor, he's a racist. He says the N-word hundreds to thousands of times a day. And everybody knows it, but they're afraid to say anything because it's a supervisor. But I've been there for over 20 years, so I've been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
Not only is he a racist, he's associated with a felon, and they own a gym in Long Island. I don't go to the gym, man. I'm 5'6", 165 pounds. That's it. I play hockey. That's it. And not only that, but he gets into domestics with his wife, who just this September, I'll be married for 25 years to this lady.
Right.
And the cops are at his house all the time. And not only that, he fails to report incidents of criminal activity. I'm the supervisor of Warren Squad. I do all this. So they talk to him. Then they just so happen to talk to his partner who was on the task force. Yeah, Bobby Ledogar is a racist. That's the only thing they can stick with.
Right.
And then another marshal. Yeah, now he thinks I said the N-word. Because if a marshal, like, where's your integrity, bro? How come you didn't say anything? Then they go to the supervisor, and the supervisor task force said, well, he might have said it in the office, and somebody might have told me. So you get two local cops saying, I say it every day, all the time, 24/7. But the people that I deal with all the time, and then my internal affairs, well, I'm the target. Now I'm the target. So I go on for this. It's all bullshit. I now confront the number 2 guy of the agency, and I call him out. So that's from there, he emboldens internal affairs to keep coming after me. And they violate their own policies by digging at stuff. There's no complaints. So on proposed removal, they're going to fire me because they're like, no, we think you're lying that you do say the N-word. Even though we interviewed 16 other people who side with you and disagree with what these 5 other people are saying. But we believe them. Yeah, because they're from headquarters. Of course you believe them. So I go to get proposed removal. I get hundreds of letters of support. I have outstanding evals, awards, all this. And we go down to headquarters now in Arlington, Virginia. Me and my lawyer have to pay for a lawyer because we have no union. So it comes out of my pocket.
Right.
As we go to see this deciding official, a chief from the Marshals, who's designated by the director of the Marshal Service to review my case. And this is like a judge, now I can plead my case to her. And solid lady, solid. We give her photographs, evidence of stuff. We find so much things more on the guys to support me, my innocence, and give her everything. And she knows that I'm being targeted. Like, she could hear it. So she's her own person. She reviews it all. And after the things I bring forth, she's like, you never lied. You told the truth. And she goes, because of what you told me, I'm going to have internal affairs go to that task force now to investigate them. So like, perfect.
Right.
But while we're sitting there, she tells us that she gets a phone call from a civilian woman who wants to tell her that I steal prisoner property and I gave her a cell phone. So this deciding if it's like, what? So my lawyers are loving it. They're like, oh, how did this civilian woman, and who is this woman, get your name and number? when this is all secret.
Right.
This is all confidential, what's going on. Of course, we find out that it was the same guy and then his partner. They all ride motorcycles together and they talked her into doing it. So now I'm getting proposed removal. I'm going to be terminated. But now I have new internal affairs investigations starting on me while I'm being fired.
Right.
So this lady's like, this is crazy. So we end that, and she tells internal affairs about this woman who called her. So that's another investigation. And it takes this woman, the deciding official, a couple of days, and she's like, unsubstantiated. You're in the clear. You did nothing wrong. But I don't get any of that money back. I paid for lawyers. I lost money, and I'm under investigation for a year. You can't get promoted. You can't do special assignment. You can't do all these things. But they're like, oh, you're good. Good. I just lost thousands and thousands of dollars. And I still have new internal affairs investigations going on against me. Internal affairs goes and interviews that woman. Now she got more stuff. This is even better. Yeah, he stole a cell phone and gave it to me, but she doesn't have it anymore.
Right.
Never any reports of a cell phone anywhere stolen. He stole a camcorder and gave it to me. Where is it? What was reported stolen? Nothing. He steals drugs off prisoners and from the evidence safe. He sells drugs. He takes drugs. He steals money. He steals property. He misuses his government car. I filed for bankruptcy, which that's an automatic dismissal right there with the government.
Right.
And I'm a bouncer at a bar. And I steal social security numbers and I give it to her to sell them. You just can't make that. This is
you're a bad man. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I'm the worst. But I've been on the job for over 20 years. So here it is now. I got another investigation against me, and it lingers on for a good 2 or 3 years. While this is going on, they're just digging up more stuff. But I'm being accused of crimes, legit crime. They never come by and audit me. They don't go into the evidence locker. They don't look for anything missing or stolen, anything like that. But I was audited by DOJ for the district. Outstanding. Everything's there. Everything's accountable. But the Marshal Service didn't come and do that.
Right.
They never sent me for a drug test. They didn't pull my gas receipts or toll receipts to see if I'm misusing my car. All these things that could clear me and show that these people were lying. They were like, no, we're just going to let it go. And yet I'm under investigation and I'm still working full duty as a supervisor, carrying a gun and a badge and putting people in harm's way. But I'm bad.
Where's the woman during all this? The one that had been accosted?
She's there. She's still working. And she then now is being targeted as well. We're both being retaliated against. So some of these men are coming out and they make accusations against her that she misuses her government car. She brought her dog to work, that I give her drugs. It just creates, like this hurricane effect of damage upon us for her doing her job.
Right.
So it goes on and on and on. Well, I am proposed removal again. And this time it's not good because the woman who's the deciding official, she's a headquarters person. She's friends with some people from that task force. She takes directions from the number 2 guy who I had called out. But I knew this woman, and she knew earlier in the years that I was being targeted, and she was against it. But now she's towing the company line, and she comes out with these findings that I lack candor, which is the bullshit government that you lie during your investigation. what was so hard to understand is that the chief of internal affairs that was interviewing me at the very end of my interviews with them says it on the record and at my hearing. Thank you for your candor and bringing this all to our attention. So I'm like, but they can do it. They got it. Just they crush you. Right. So they come April 2020, I was fired for conduct unbecoming, violating the code of professional responsibility at their opinion. I had all the facts and the truth and everything there. And remember now, April 2020, we were shut down. The government, which it's the pandemic, everything's over. So
by this point, how many years had this been going on, Robert?
I was with this case with them was over 5 years.
Okay.
Over 5 years. And it was very personal and it was a lot of things said. And I had 24 years and 10 months in the Marshal Service. I was 49 years old and I was 70 days from retiring. But what the real knife in the heart is that like I memorized these dates, it's sick, on Friday, April 17th, 2020, I got an email from Human Resources that your retirement is approved and you can retire on June 30th, 2020. But wait, on Monday, April 20th, 2020 at 4:00, my chief from the district called me and said, they fired you. Even though that was set. And I was on leave, right, mind you, because we're doing a pandemic, you could work from home. Not me. I had more days on the books than I did work. So I was using my annual leave and my sick leave. I had nothing pending. We were shut down and that was it. And that the government's very powerful. So what they want, what they hope, and what so many people say it is, they want you to kill yourself. They want you to die.
Right. And
they think that you financially cannot afford to fight them. And you can't. It's overwhelming. And you got to pay for a lawyer, and lawyers are expensive. And we have these, this silly association, FLEOA, which they suck. They're in bed with the agencies, they all give each other T-shirts here and there, a couple of plaques. And then we have this liability insurance, which is, they want you to use their lawyers. I don't know these lawyers, right. I can't get some guy from Wisconsin to defend me and from Brooklyn, So my lawyers were very expensive. They're great, great people. They're so smart. And, but I got fired and we had to put in an appeal before the Merit System Protection Board, which that's what you have to do as a government employee. And it's a joke. It's a kangaroo court.
Right.
And the designated judges, they're administrative law judges. They might not even be a lawyer or a judge. And this woman got my case and she was totally overwhelmed. And like, it was too much. It's complex. And in the beginning, during the pretrial conferences, mm-hmm, she's making recommendations to the government, like, you should settle. This is ridiculous. You should settle. And they didn't want to do it. They're like, no, we're not budging. He's the worst employee ever, and we never wanted him. Well, it blows my mind. Why don't you tell the rest of the world then? Why don't you contact these people for the last 20 years that I was, the worst?
Right.
They didn't do that, And so it was well over December 22. It took 2 years for my court case because of extensions and adjournments, all the typical government stuff. And you have to pay all this.
Right.
So I was very lucky. A lot of great people connected with me and helped me out and educated me on things. And there was a couple of guys that I became friendly with And they told me about this police foundation, a National Police Defense Foundation, is out of New Jersey. And I contacted them. In the beginning, they were like, nah, we don't want to go up against the government. Some other people talked to them and they're like, no, this is the guy you want to get involved with. And when they did, man, they picked me up and they created a legal defense fund for me, which saved my life. And so many people donated to it, which was just unbelievable. Like for my lawyers, because New York lawyers, well, you know, they got to be more expensive than everybody else.
Right, right.
But there was too many. I have too many people that are so smart telling me, they're like, you got screwed, you got railroaded. You know, it's a true case of retaliation and betrayal, collusion, you know, and lies, just true lies. And they're like, you have the facts and the truth on your side. You have policy on your side. But the government manipulates it. They cherry pick your words, you know, and they intimidate the judges. You know, it's all the government. So the judge ruled in favor of the marshals and said, no, they can terminate you. And I'm going to stand by it, even though some of the policies don't make sense.
Right.
So, and for that judge, it means nothing. You know, okay, you're fired. And if you don't like the decision, appeal that decision to go to the next level of the Merit System Protection Board, a quorum, a 3-panel quorum, which is not in session because they have to be appointed by the president. So for over 4 years, nobody got appointed under Trump. And then now you got Biden. So, but it was just, so we put in our appeal and it's been sitting in there for well over a year. And Biden was able to push forward 3 people.
Okay.
One's an independent, a Republican, and a Democrat, which is great. And a lot of people are happy with the people that will push forward. So they get it. There's over 3,000 cases that they have to review. A lot they just pushed through already. They were like, this is all bullshit. Well, one of the appointees, one of the judges, he already resigned. He now is representing with his nonprofit organization, the FBI whistleblowers. So he was sitting before Congress saying how wrong the government is.
Right.
Which that guy would have been great for me. You know?
Yeah.
But because I'm identified as a whistleblower, which is hard to comprehend when I just told the truth and I didn't report any extra crime or wrongdoing. I just brought forth what they did to this young lady, you know, and what they were doing to me. So now I'm fired. My appeals are in, you know, I got no job. I got no benefits. I'm married and, fighting to get by.
Well,
so
Robert,
I got to go out.
How are you making ends meet right now?
Well, I got a job. I can't go too deep into it, but I'm a security consultant for a private organization. And I do some traveling. Okay. Which, you know, it's weird. You know, you get interviewed from people now and then they Google you and they search your name. And I'm like, gosh, you know, I'm not getting nothing, you know. Right. And plus it was the pandemic. You know, I couldn't even go to Home Depot and get a job. I'm like, this is horrible. So, but I got that job. It's been great. It saved me. But not to go too deep into it, more on my own personal thing, and it's because of my case, is that connecting with people on LinkedIn, I connected with these guys who were with the FBI, and they got screwed over by the agency, you know, for telling the truth. Sure. And they educated the hell out of me. They taught me about the Office of Personnel Management and moving forward. And I'm a veteran. And they're like, you have over 30 years in the government. So I'm like, yeah. They're like, I started what they told me and I started researching. Well, I was able to get my retirement. So, you know, good does prevail over evil. Right. If you stay focused, you got to stay focused, man, and look at it. And they taught me, and I used the government against the government.
So you did get your retirement?
Yeah, I got it last year, and of course, it took them a couple of months to figure out my numbers.
Right.
And yeah, I got my full retirement, thank goodness, my pension, 32 years. And now my appeal, though, is still before the Merit System Board.
Right.
Because they still owe me my retirement from the Marshal Service and that. And I'm trying to get back pay and attorney fees because it's big money. So with that, also, you know, going forward, I'm writing a book about this. I speak about it. I try to help other people who are in positions like me, especially with the government. That's what I know now. Like, I know the Merit System Protection Board. I know what's going to happen and how you get screwed. And the young lady who I defended, so as much as I defended her, she's defending me now. Right. She's outspoken.
Is she still part of the agency or not?
No, she retired. And she filed an EEO against the government. But it becomes it's overwhelming, you know, and everybody's different. And, you know, on the recommendations of our lawyers, they settled with the government. But she couldn't take it, and she was it's a lot, right. You know, and she's she's a single woman now. You know, her and her girlfriend broke up because of a lot of this stuff. And you know, she had no bodyguards. Like, I'm in Florida, she's in New York. So she, you know, she has a family, but it's still a lot. And you're going up against the government. So she settled her EEO and got a lot of money and retired. And she, you know, her and I are very good friends, close together, and, you know, keep talking about things.
Right.
And moving forward. You know?
So your move to Florida, was that prompted by the problems that you were having in New York?
Yes. Okay. I couldn't, these guys at times would show up at my house. And I was about 60 miles from Brooklyn to my house in Suffolk County. And we have a mother and daughter house. It was me and my wife and my mother-in-law. Our neighbors were telling my wife and my mother-in-law, like, this cop sitting on the block watching. And, you know, some of my neighbors, I'm like, hey, write down the plate and let me know. And you get the plate, run it. You're like, oh, it's some undercover cop there.
Right.
And I never saw them, but we knew it was for us. And we found out later on that who they were. And it was from the task force, some guys from there. Well, not only that, is people were coming onto our driveway and putting screws in our tires to even my wife's car. My wife, who had nothing to do with this. And you're just putting screws in the sidewall. You're ruining the tire, whatever. She's getting a flat tire while she's driving. Thank goodness it's only a flat tire. It's not exploding. But they're doing it to my personal car, my work car. I was getting pulled over sometimes at nighttime by some of these guys out in Suffolk because my windows were too dark. The tinting was too dark. But you run my plate and it comes back, you know I'm a cop. So they're trying to get you. And they can, man, they can. I'm just a US Marshal. You know, there's only 200 of us in New York.
Right.
You know, so these local police departments have thousands.
Right.
So it's tough to go up against them.
I do want to ask you some questions about,
yes, please,
about the case. Before I do that, you know, I was federal prisoner, cybercrime. This is what I was, and
hardcore. You're hardcore.
Well, I mean, pled guilty to 39 felonies. Went to prison, escaped from prison. Of course, you guys picked me up from that. And what I wanted to say, you know, I was on Con Air twice and dealt with you guys extensively, and the biggest letdown I ever had was Con Air. You know, I'd seen the movie with Nick Cage, and I was sitting there going, they told me I was flying on Con Air, and I was like, well, shit, man, I've got it made now. I want to see this shit and get on an Alaskan Airlines plane. And I'm like, well, this is the biggest letdown on the planet. But, you know, one thing that always stuck with me, and it sticks with me to this day, is the way the U.S. Marshals treated inmates, and just the utmost respect. And that really stuck with me, man. You guys treated us like human beings. with courtesy, respect, and I mean, you were professional across the board. Make no mistake about that. But you treated us as human beings, and these days, whenever I meet a marshal, I thank them for the way they treated me, because it meant a lot at a time when you're hitting rock bottom and you think the end is nigh and you're never going to amount to anything. It meant a lot back then, and I just wanted to thank you for being a marshal and for treating others with respect, because every single one I ever encountered was like that. I just wanted to say that it truly does. It means a lot to me.
Brett, I appreciate you saying that. It's a really nice thing to say, but I think I molded my career off that. Like, we're dealing with, bad people,
right?
People, guys and girls that commit crime, and they outnumber us in the cell block and transport, and especially in Brooklyn. I mean, we would have a regular Chevy or Ford van. You put 12 people in the back, and you're face to face. We're face to face. Like I said, I would have to go into MDC or MCC or a local jail, and you have to handcuff guys and girls face to face. You're
right.
inches away from each other, and you're breathing on each other, and you're talking to each other and asking their name. What? You're a person, and I maintained a great reputation in the courts, in the cell block, with inmates or arrestees or fugitives or perps. I was known on the street, and it didn't bother me at all. And I developed, informants and sources, and they had my number.
Right.
I had inmates call me from jail and put me on their list, and I spoke for them when I in court, or I made the good faith statement to U.S. attorneys and probation officers, like, no, this guy's, it's giving me good, solid information, like, let him out. What you, especially us marshals, our biggest cases were getting probation violators.
Right.
Oh, because you smoked weed when you're out there, and you want this guy or girl to report to probation at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. He's working. Let him go to work.
Right.
So they mess with you. But thank you for saying that, and I know what you're saying, because it is the guys and the girl marshals that are at the deputy level and the supervisor level that are interacting every day with inmates. It's not the people in headquarters that are making decisions to tell you how to do your job.
Exactly.
Like, hey, come into a cell block. It's hard.
Right.
It's tough.
You had you said you went into the Navy after high school, and you went into military police. What prompted you wanting to go into law enforcement?
Nobody in my family is law enforcement. There's a man back in my hometown that I look up to. He wound up becoming a homicide detective in NYPD, and he's like a town hero. I love this guy, and he's been there from day one to save my life, like to fight for me. But it was Friday nights while I was in high school, 9 o'clock at night, New York time, watching Miami Vice with my dad. And I'm like, Sonny Crockett is the coolest guy in the world.
Crockett and Tubbs.
That's it, man. And you got to appreciate Tubbs. He was like, he gets jammed up in New York and leaves New York to go to Miami, and then he's loving life. But Crockett, man, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a cop like that.
Okay.
And that's what got me into it.
So military police, what was most things you dealt with?
Theft. A lot of theft.
Yeah. I say inmates, but so soldiers stealing from each other, or what?
Sailors. Let's get the right language here.
Sorry, you're right. Sailors stealing from each other.
Sailors and Marines, yeah, from the commissary on the bases. But then another big thing was I was in Italy, in La Maddalena. Beautiful. It was awesome, man. The Italian girls were so beautiful. And there was dependents from military spouses. And they were shipping mescaline back from the States to Italy. And then I got involved with having to do that. And I worked with when they were called NIS, now they're NCIS.
Okay.
And, we intercepted some, petty drug trafficking, from military dependents. A lot of alcohol related incidents, fights. And of course, some sex crimes, sexual assault or even a rape here and there.
Right.
But that was really it.
Yeah, but you stayed busy, it sounds like.
It was exciting.
Yeah.
It was exciting. And you learn a lot at a young age and you become very mature and independent at a young age. Like if you leave high school and join the military, I think the military is great. I think everybody should go in.
Right. And I'm sure that military discipline carried over to the U.S. Marshals as well, right?
Of course, big time. And you can tell the difference in some people who just went to college and lived at home in their parents' house until they got married, compared to leaving. I was 17 years old and I left, and you left New York and I was having a great time. But what am I going to do? I wasn't going to college and I wasn't going to be a cop or a fireman. I wanted to go into the military. I wanted to become a federal agent and I was following my path.
Right.
And, you got to be disciplined. And I, thank goodness for my mom and dad. And they pushed for me to do it. And even my friends from back home in Rockaway. I mean, I'm still friends with those guys. I've been friends with them since kindergarten and we're still friends today. And they're big supporters. So I loved it. I loved everything I did in the Navy. I did almost 7 years. And, my regret is that I didn't stay and do the reserves.
Right.
But, I came back to New York. I was 24, 25 years old and hooking up with my friends and partying and working and loving life.
Where all did you travel in the Navy?
I was in Pensacola for a good year or so. Then I was in Bahrain during Desert Storm and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And then I went to La Maddalena, Italy, which is an island off the mainland of Italy in Sardinia.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I could hear in your voice you liked that. What do you think of the Middle East?
It was. I didn't mind. It's amazing. Today it's amazing. I mean, look at UAE and Kuwait. Kuwait's the richest country in the world. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I was in Saudi last November, and it's the first time I've ever been over there. And yeah, they are doing all kinds of stuff over there. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, Bahrain was great. It's a neutral country. All the embassies are there. And but it's scary as hell because you had Desert Storm going. So it was every day you heard the air alarms from Scud missiles coming.
Right.
And but I mean the Desert Storm was it took 2 days and we won the war. It was nothing much. So that was nothing like what these guys went through today. So
right.
But so still great.
You get out, you join the Marshals, and I mean you had one hell of a career at the Marshals. I mean, you truly did. I
had an awesome career. We worked on some major cases.
What were the major cases that you worked on? If you can talk about those.
Well, one is El Chapo, of course, came into Eastern New York. And
did you get to see and deal with El Chapo or not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What kind of a son of a bitch was that?
He played the game that he didn't speak English, but he was, what are you going to do? You got marshals on you all day long, and he did whatever we told him to do, and that was it. But the security around our courthouse was insane because you still had these maniacs that think they were going to break them out and get millions of dollars. Right. And,
any attempts to do that or not?
No, there was some stuff on social media, some hits there and there, but nothing crazy like that. Okay. And then you would have some maniac people that have just come into the courthouse to try to see him or touch him and get a picture. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Like he's the Pope or something.
Yeah. I mean, this is the biggest criminal in our lifetime.
Yeah. Easily.
And I'm proud to say that I was involved with working some of that stuff because some of the marshals were assigned with the DEA to work it. So I was involved. Right. And it's amazing. It's just amazing. And the people that worked on that case are just the smartest men and women in the world that can do investigations. I mean, there's some people out there that you never hear from in your whole life. And these people are amazing. They're great.
Was there ever a time when you were at the Marshal? I mean, I'm sure there was that you were frightened for your life.
Yeah, I've been involved in 4 shootings. in New York, 3 in Queens and 1 out in Long Island. And it was the last shooting. And we went and tracked this guy down, and he was in an illegal house apartment, and he wound up putting on a bulletproof vest and had 2 guns. And we breached the door. A couple of people got in there, and I was the last person. And next to me was another young lady who worked with me. And her and I were by the doorway to go in. And there were 6 people, Marshal men, in that apartment. And it was small, it's very small.
Right.
And the bad guy opened the door and just stuck his hand out and started shooting. And in your mind, you could feel the bullets going past. You're like, and I tightened up and I shrunk up. I was the size of a 2x4 at that moment to get protection. And all I saw was this young lady that worked for me. And it's not the same girl that I protected, another girl just standing there. And she too just, stood solid, but never left her post.
Right.
Stayed right there. And the guys in there were all able to take cover and return fire. And these guys were great. And they connected. They shot him in his hand and shot the gun. And he went, picked up another gun, and we had NYPD guys outside doing an outside perimeter. And he started shooting out the window.
Jesus.
So when that was happening, we were able to, somewhat retreat and get better coverage. We had shields out, and we were able to control the entrance to the door where he couldn't escape unless he went out a window, but we had that covered.
Right.
And he then opened the door and came out to surrender. And he's got a gun in his hand. He's wearing a bulletproof vest with a holster sewed into the vest. So he was prepared.
Yeah.
And coming out, and we were able to give commands to get him to surrender, where he threw the gun at us and we took him down. And in New York, NYPD is unbelievable. The response, for backup within seconds. And once you hear, like for us on the street, because we worked with the NYPD, once you go on that radio and call Central for help, that there's a shooting, 1013, or the Army shows up. It's unbelievable. And the ambulances that are like, they were there. This guy wasn't even in handcuffs, and we had ambulance there for him. And you have professionals. And these medics, they're doctors. I mean, they are those EMT guys. They can do more than a doctor can do in a hospital, from head to toe within seconds. And unbelievable. There was 25 round shot, and he was the only one hit.
Well, that's good.
It's amazing. And then he sued us for police brutality.
Of course he did. You shot him in the hand.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to go through that, and that was while I was getting terminated. So now the U.S. attorneys have to represent me in that case, and a nice kick in the ass to me,
right,
was that I was being talked about and nominated to become a presidential appointee under Trump for Eastern New York to be the U.S. Marshal. But I had my own agency investigating me as if I'm a criminal.
Good God, man.
So you can't, it just.
So before we get into that, what happened to this perp? Did he ever get out of prison after that?
No, sir. He's in and he's doing life.
Of course he is.
Because we got him on a homicide, drugs, and of course shooting at us.
Right.
And then NYPD is looking at him for another. And then he admits it. He says he buried a guy that they killed at the house of his ex-wife.
Jesus Christ.
So you're like, it's like a Law and Order episode,
Right.
That's what it is.
So you had said, what struck me when you were talking, first let me ask, so predominantly, it's a male environment, is what I'm
Yes.
guessing.
Yes.
But you had there were women agents in the office beforehand. You just mentioned one. Had any of those women agents had any difficulties at all before the one we're talking about, or not?
Not so blatant as what happened to her, but yes, when investigators started coming in to investigate and do interviews, 2 or 3 other women marshals told their experiences with some of these men, and it was deeper. One lady who was a supervisor brought up that the one man that assaulted our marshal was in the gym leaving the sauna in his white underwear that was soaking wet that you could see through. And he did it other times in front of the cleaning women and would stand there and look at them. So you're like, and this is all comes out afterwards. We're like, what the hell is going on here? Like, these are grown men, and these men are married to women, and some of them have daughters. And this is what you're doing.
Right.
It's just...
Had any of those women filed any type of complaints beforehand or anything like that?
The cleaning lady brought it to the attention, but it never made it up high enough to go anywhere. And what happened was the contracted company that was doing the cleaning didn't want to lose the contract.
Right.
So they just put her on a different floor.
Right.
But when things started talking, that's when it all came out. Of course, nobody wants to come forward. They're afraid.
I mean, and that's not outside the norm. You get that in these work environments of someone that's harassing someone, and instead of doing proper protocols, they simply move that person to a different position and hush it up, sweep it under the rug. Don't want to lose a contract, don't want to upset people, anything else like that. I mean, that's not uncommon. You had mentioned that word culture. What? And hey, I mean, in prison, I mean, we bust each other's balls, and I'm sure in law enforcement, I know in military it's like that. But there's a difference between busting one another's balls and sexually harassing another individual. You know, it's the story, what you've told me about this woman, you know, urinating in a jar, making her kiss the guy on a daily basis, haranguing her about her sexual preferences, trying to date her girlfriend, assaulting her as they're arresting a perp, trying to run her off the road. It's breathtaking to think that you would have that in an agency such as the U.S. Marshals. You know, it truly is. And then you've got the higher ups that instead of, because again, we don't want to upset anybody. We don't want any black eyes on our agency. So instead of it blaming it on, you know, where it needs to be blamed on, they find a you and decide that it's your fault. And that's, I mean, Robert, goddamn, man. I mean, this is some serious shit.
It's disappointing, right?
Yeah.
When you say it like that, it's very disappointing. What has me stand out higher than them all is that I had the support of every chief I ever worked for in the district. Until today, I still have the support of my direct chief, who's still working today, and he's actually a lawyer. I have the support of hundreds and hundreds of people. And all we did was tell the truth. We just came forward. And all they had to do was remove 2 or 3 people in the beginning and
but
get
it snowballs, right? I mean, it snowballs.
Because
it starts where you, if you would have taken care of it to begin with, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But instead, you don't. You delay. And when you delay, that ball keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
And it finally just crushes everything, because it put a huge black eye on that task force. It was talked about nationwide. Here it is today. It's still being talked about. And you see it every day on the news with all these different whistleblowers that come out. We have no good leaders. We have no discipline. We have no focus or structure on what needs to be done. And it could be simple things. Stop telling me that we're going to have all these classes or we have to have a conversation. You have to do things now on. You have to remove people from certain things. You have to take people totally out of certain jobs, but they don't do that.
Well, that's one of the things that, I ask you, you brought that discipline with you from the military. And I've been very fortunate I've been to Quantico a few times, talking to the CISO Academy there. And I've met a lot of agents. I have the utmost respect for the work that's done at Quantico and the work that the FBI does. I truly do. One of the things that strikes me is let's be honest, you've got two different types of agents there. You've got the guys that come through the ranks, and then you've got the guys that don't know what the hell they're friggin' doing. And a lot of the times, those guys that don't know what the hell they're doing get placed in a position of authority. And it sounds like I may be barking up the wrong tree here. I mean, you came through the ranks from military, bringing the discipline of the military with you, worked yourself up through the ranks to where you've got a storied, respectable career. I mean, you are outstanding. And then you've got these other guys that I don't know if they came through the ranks or not. It doesn't sound like they had a whole lot of discipline or a whole lot of, integrity about them. And they don't do the right damn thing at the end of the day.
No, that's a good way to look at it. And I agree with you 100%. And maybe I'm old school, even though I'm young old school.
Yeah.
That there needs to be structure. And law enforcement is a hands-on job. You have to be physically fit. You got to be mentally prepared. And you got to be willing to do more than the next person. Being a cop is a hard job.
Right.
You're getting called, you're dealing with bad people, you're going to bad things, you're intervening on problems. You got to be able to handle that. And when you lower the standards and change the qualifications and do away with requirements, you're hurting the people you're hiring, you're hurting the departments and the agencies, and then most of all, you're hurting the community. You really are. The young lady that I defended, she was athletic. She's not a weightlifter or anything, but she's fit. She can take care of herself.
Right.
She played soccer and softball and coached young kids in that. And she was busy. She would do exercise. There was 2 or 3 other women that I worked with were in a gym. One of them was a kickboxer. You're not messing with her. More so than the guys. Some of the guys today, and it's all about feelings, holding hands and skipping down the road. You can't do that.
Right.
I mean, you look what happened the other day in New York, in the city, with giving out a PlayStation at complete chaos. And you're throwing bottles at cops. And there's 10 cops against 2,000 people. It's wrong. You can't, the way you're raising children today, listen, you can't beat a kid to death, but every now and then somebody needs to be smacked in the ass. I mean, it's just horrible. A lot of truth to that. I mean, look what happened yesterday or the day before in Alabama.
Yeah.
With that man who just moved the boat from one cleat to another cleat, and he was attacked by 5 other people. Right. That's going to turn into a whole racial scenario now.
Right.
It's going to go bad. And they're going to make examples of those white guys who attacked that black man. They have to. The media has to make examples. Right. Instead of just saying that those 5 white guys are pieces of shit, and that one black man did nothing wrong. Like
exactly.
That's it. But the way it is today, the culture, it just changed, totally changed, and it for my case, those men, they were all white guys. They used a race card. What better thing is to call a white guy a racist in the culture back in 2015, 2016, when it's just coming to that level? And but you have no evidence against me. But once you throw that racist word out there, it's
I
over.
take it, and I didn't want to ask this, but I take it that the individual who said that was a person of color or not?
I'm sorry?
Was the person who said that you had said the N-word, was he a person of color as well, or not?
No, none of them. None of them. And but I did have one man who was a friend of mine who worked with me from Queens, a black man, and he was a BOP guy before he became a marshal. And we're very good friends, same age. He went in the Army, I was in the Navy. We started our careers, the similarities.
Right.
And he wrote one of the most heartwarming letters ever. And he thanked the marshal for investigating racism, but everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right.
And he did it to the Marshal Service. He goes, "You're investigating the wrong man. I know Bobby Ledogar, and it's not him. Come talk to me." But they didn't.
Of course not, because they don't want to know the truth. They want to sweep this shit under the rug and be done with it.
Yeah.
What happened to the individual that was harassing the woman? Is he still part of the agency or not?
No, they're all gone.
They're all gone.
They're all gone. The one deputy marshal, he retired before it all started.
Okay.
The one cop who groped her, he retired within 30 days of her complaining.
Okay.
The guy who tried to fight me and assaulted her, he was kicked off the task force and he retired from local. He was a sheriff.
Okay.
The man who supported him, his partner, was a probation officer. He was removed from the task force. Nobody knows what happened to him.
Right.
And then the supervisor of those men, my counterpart, he was proposed removal because he got caught up into actually lying. But the funny thing with that is his deciding official was the same deciding official who fired me. Well, she let him retire in lieu of staying and getting anything because he was eligible. I was not eligible.
Right.
But if they would have just dragged my case out 2 or 3 months, I would have been retired.
So you become the sacrificial lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, all the pieces of shit that were responsible for this, they quietly tell them to go into that good night and just kind of hopefully it's forgotten over time.
Of course it's going to be forgotten over time because they don't expect me or her to say anything. And they had to answer to Congress because the young lady, she wrote letters to Senator Gillibrand, Congressman Peter King, Senator Grassley, and Senator Grassley's office actually takes some language from her case and my case to include it into his report of investigation of misconduct by the marshals that creates an inquiry. But the marshals are able to come back and say, we fixed that problem because we identified the problems.
So, and it's not just, your story is not just a unique story. It's not this outlier. I mean, this is a problem that we have heard time and time again with the Secret Service. We've seen it with different agencies, both at state, local, federal levels as well. How do you solve a problem like this? Do we need some sort of, I know you said internal affairs, but do you need some sort of outside auditing agency that oversees this stuff? I mean, how do you potentially solve these problems that are going on?
You definitely need an outside agency to come in and look at that. Even a private civilian organization, even like law firms to review it, as well as like open the door and start some kind of program with law colleges to review some of these cases and make recommendations. You cannot have even agency internal affairs investigate themselves. You can't have that.
Right.
You cannot have leadership staying in leadership positions throughout their career. You can't become a leader after 3 or 5 years on a job and running an agency. You can't, it's unbelievable. It's not workable.
Right.
You can't do that. And that's the problem with the Marshal Service. And that's the only agency I can talk about,
Right.
is that they let marshals go to headquarters after 3 or 5 years on a job, and they're groomed to rise up through the ranks. And you can't create, that's an admin job. You're an administrator now in headquarters. You should not get all the perks of not the perks of all the funding that the guys and girls in the districts are doing. That's where the work is. That's where you're dealing with the real job of the Marshal Service, not in headquarters where you're writing a policy and getting awards for writing a policy to use, a black pen instead of a blue pen. Come on.
Right.
You can't do that. But that's the problem, and it needs to be restructured. And the government is way too big. You can't have, even with all these agencies, like with the problem with the FBI or the DEA. The DEA is the leader with drugs. They need to investigate drugs and maybe merge ATF with the DEA, because with drugs is guns.
Yeah, almost always.
You don't have the FBI working those cases, and have the FBI take the Secret Service. Listen, your job is just protection. Why are you investigating financial crimes?
Right.
Give that to the FBI. It's just distorted. And they're all screwing each other over, trying to get extra money.
Is there any, have you seen any type of movement toward that type of reconciliation or, fixing this problem or not?
No, it gets shut down. And what are we going to do? You and I, taxpayers, get hurt when they have all these congressional hearings. Nothing comes out of it. All the evidence is exposed to the public, so it can't be used in court. It's all tainted. So we're still going to argue about Russian collusion or the server or emails.
Right.
Come on, where are we going with this?
Robert, I want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on the show. I have the utmost respect for the work that you've done. You have no idea how much I respect you, just regardless of the environment that you were in, all the pressure that you had to be going under, the harassment that you were going through. For you to stand up straight and just do the right goddamn thing, that speaks volumes as to who you are and what type of man you are. And I truly respect that. I truly do. I really hope, I'm tickled to death that you got your retirement. And I really hope that you are able to clear your name on this, and that you get the respect that you absolutely deserve at the end of the day. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I truly hope it happens. I truly do.
Well, Brett, I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. It's really nice. And thank you for the opportunity to come on your show. It's kind of tough. We have different backgrounds. So
we do.
To come into it. But I appreciate what you said, and thank you very much. And, if it wasn't for, someone like you listening to me and believing me and hearing what I had to say, and like you say, you can hear it in my voice, my tone. And when people are lying or bullshitting around or whatever, right. I have the documents to prove it, just like everybody else. And there's too many articles about me and stories about me out there. There's no reason to lie. It's going to come out. And, thank goodness for my wife, who's been behind me at 100% since day one.
Right.
And what got me going to fight this, like, you can never quit. All of us know that. You got to move forward, because the most important thing in this world is money, because you need money to survive. You got to live. And if it wasn't for my wife telling me the one day that she was proud of me for protecting Dawn, and that was it, man. That's the only thing you need, and it's weird, and it keeps you going. And then moving forward and having other people tell you what you did wrong and what you did right and what you have to do, and taking advice and listening to them and moving forward. Otherwise, you're done. You're dead in the water.
I agree.
And you can't be. You got to fight on.
Robert Ledogar, U.S. Marshal, I know you said you're working on a book. If people want to contact you, how can they go about contacting you?
The only thing I have is LinkedIn under my name.
All right, LinkedIn it is. So if you want Robert to speak for you, and you've heard the man here, you've heard his story, you've heard his testimony, you know that he is an outstanding human being. He does the right damn thing every single day, regardless of the consequence. So if you want this man to speak for you, and I tell you, you do, find him on LinkedIn, Robert Ledogar, and we'll have his LinkedIn profile linked into the show notes as well. Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Brett Johnson Show.
Thank you, Brett.
All right, so that was episode number 82 of the Brett Johnson Show. Hey, what to say? I am disappointed that Robert Ledogar was treated that way, but not only him, the agent that suffered that sexual harassment, that violence which was perpetrated upon her, and how that was kind of, or, they wanted to sweep that under the rug, and they made Mr. Ledogar basically the fall guy for everything. And he has suffered greatly because of that. It's, I can understand someone that's a former criminal being, looked down upon and mistreated. But Mr. Ledogar made a career of law enforcement, of doing the right thing, of making our society safer. And when he was presented with that internal problem of a fellow agent being sexually harassed, and when he took up for her, the higher-ups not having his back, of basically, doing away with him, making him that fall guy. Disappointing, to say the least. And I'm hopeful that Mr. Ledogar is able to redeem his name and his good standing, because he absolutely deserves it. My name is Brett Johnson. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. If you like the show, please subscribe. If you don't like the show, please subscribe. I need all the subscribers I can get. I don't care where you subscribe, if it's iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, but please press that subscribe button. Please leave me some feedback. If you've got a guest that you think would be a good fit for this show, let me know. If you've got a problem, if you think that there's some way to improve the show, let me know. I read all the comments, and I typically will respond to all the comments. So just know that. Know that I'm very grateful that you take time out of your day to tune in and listen to this show. And I truly do appreciate that. My name is Brett Johnson. We're going to close things out. How do we close it out? We close it out the same way every single time. Stay safe, stay secure, and stay vigilant. But most importantly, understand that this is the Brett Johnson Show, and at the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. My name is Brett Johnson. Until next time.